Hello, and welcome to my session at the MVPDays Azure Day. Today, we want to talk about the unknown. We want to talk about Azure blueprints, management groups, and policies, and why they are there and why you should take care of them. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Eric. I am the global lead for cloud platforms at SoftwareOne, and I'm also an active member in the Microsoft community. So I'm a Microsoft MVP for Cloud and Data Center Management and also for Microsoft Azure. If you want to reach out to me, feel free to shoot me an email, follow me on Twitter, or find me on any other social media or my websites. And now let's go into the topic. When we have a look in today's IT, we can see that IT is very well transforming. So we have DevOps, the bad word of the year. So DevOps really means that people have to get into some new topics. So for example, we're talking about things like infrastructure as code. So many people from the old operational IT have some problems with this. At the same time, we are changing our operational model. So it's not any longer here we are the developers, here you are the operational guys. So now we have to collaborate. We have to work with each other. And that's especially important to be successful in the cloud. Also, we focus more on business value and we want to have a faster time to market. Nobody wants to wait for 2 or 3 years for a new product. So everybody wants to shoot out very, very fast. But at the same time, we need some security and some management around this. And this is what we want to talk about today. So if we have a look at what Microsoft offers in Azure, you will find several things related to Azure management and Azure security. First and almost, the thing we want to have a look into now is governance and topics around this. We have security, we have resiliency topics, we have monitoring, and we have automation. And if we dive a bit deeper into governance, then we will find several tools that will help us. But first, let's have a look. In the old and traditional IT, you can see the split in the IT because you see people that are responsible for operations or IT governance, and they really want to stick to their policies, their security rules. They need some cost management, and they are really, really forcing control. Well, in the time of cloud, control is getting worse and worse for them because in the cloud, nearly everybody can do everything. On the other hand, we have the development teams, and they always ask for self-service. They want to have some production access, they want to be rapid in their releases, and they don't want to wait for the operational team. So they are growing their speed, and now we have a problem here. So speed versus control. So how do we handle this? And Microsoft has an answer for this, and this means Azure governance. So while we allow the people who really needs it to be very, very fast and do the most things on their own, we on the other hand side have a team of cloud custodians that will help us to achieve that everything is still under control, is still under the right governance. And the tools used therefore are management groups, cost management things, resource graph, and blueprints. And in blueprints, we have the interesting part of policies. And this is what we want to have a look in today. So the three main parts we have to focus on are policies, the interesting thing to control Azure a bit. So just to give you an idea of what it means is, think about locations, or think about sizes of virtual machines, or think about Cosmos DB, reserved units, or whatever. Azure can get very expensive. So the most expensive VM you can run is around about $58,000 a month, an M128 with a SQL Server data center running on it. And if you spin up a VM that costs you $58,000 a month, you know every day is around about $2,000. And if you don't recognize this, it's quite expensive. And so the main idea is to have some policies in place to really keep an eye on this. So for example, what we see here, and we will go into this a bit deeper in a second, we will have to have some policies that don't allow us to go into the wrong location, that don't allow us to deploy such a huge VM that's so damn expensive. On the other hand, we have the blueprints. We'll have a look into this at the end, which combines many things we have in Azure right now around management. And then we have the management groups. And management groups are nowadays one of the most important things, because all the things Microsoft is creating right now really relies on management groups. And so let's have a look into what management groups actually are. So management groups are the helping step to group your subscriptions and to build an additional layer of management above of them. So what we've seen in the past was the enterprise agreement portal, so ea.azure.com. And in ea.azure.com, you've been able to create departments, accounts, and subscriptions. So you could group subscriptions in an account. You still have this, and an account could be related to a department, and so you could have several accounts that are related to one department. But this was always an idea of controlling cost management. It was a contract thing. But we still want to have some grouping of logical groups in our subscription world. And this is what management groups are about. We can create some kind of hierarchy for managing, for accessing, and also for controlling our environment. And at the same time, we can use this for cost management and other things. So what Microsoft is talking about here is the idea of, okay, just group, for example, your production resource groups, or production subscriptions, and also group your pre-production or test or dev or whatever you have on production and non-production systems. Just group them, and then you can bring a set of role-based access control, a set of policies, and even if you want to, you can bring in some templates that you really need there. And then it doesn't matter if you have to manage 1, 10, or 100 subscriptions that are productive or non-productive. Just put them into a management group, and you will have the ability to manage them all at once. So let's have a look into an environment where I have created this for you. So this is my real life environment out of my good old Azure world. So what you can see here, I have several subscriptions. So for example, I have a demo here. We have done some IoT workshops. We've created a phone finder bot. We have a test lab running, and we have some test systems for a customer project. If I want to go in there and want to set some specific things like role-based access control, or I want to set some policies, we'll have a look into this later, or if I want to control my cost, it's always a dive into this one. And that's getting annoying if you handle more than 10, 100, whatever resources. And so you want to group them. So the idea is, for example, to have a master group. So we have the Software One, Germany, Infrastructure and Apps, Azure group here. You can see there's one little problem. Our company was named Comprex earlier this year, and we've been rebranded to Software One now. And what you can see now is, okay, I was able to change the name, but the ID is a thing that is written once and never changed again. So be careful when changing or choosing the names of your management groups. You may change the name, but you will never change the idea. You could delete them and recreate them, but if you have already set some things in there, maybe you don't want this. And now I can go into this management group, for example. And what you can see is, in this management group, there are more management groups. Because, for example, we have production, but in production, we may differ into several projects or into several departments in our organization or different countries or whatever. And so, for example, here, I have grouped once again in our Azure environment into demo, dev, and project-related environments. And now I can group my subscriptions into those management groups. And if we have a look into one management group, you can see that we find everything that's important in there. We find an access control, so the standard IAM blade with the role assignments here. We also find policies, activity logs, and all the cost management things. And you will see an combined cost management. You will see the policies that are combined for this management group and not any longer for a specific single subscription. So you can handle the access control for hundreds of subscriptions at the same time. So management groups are the first important thing you have to keep in mind when we are talking about the topics of today. The second thing we want to have a look into are policies. So Microsoft was into policies for quite a while, so they started right early in 2017 to bring in some limited public preview of policies. Then they moved quickly forward into a public preview. They were in GA in May last year. And then at Ignite, we've seen so many improvements. And right now, we see more and more and more improvements like in-guest policies and something like this. Policies try to help us to enforce and keep compliance of several rules based on resources, rules based on machines, virtual machine configurations. And it's really the idea to apply policies on scale based on management groups. So there they are again. And also the main idea is not only to have policies and some compliance, there's also the goal to have some remediation. So how does policies work? So when we have a look into Azure, you have the ARM, the Azure Resource Manager, and the Azure Resource Manager has Azure Policy created in there. So every action you take into the ARM API, the REST API, will be handled also by the Azure Policy Engine. So they will have a look into your code config request. So what's going on there? So then you have several things that can happen. So first, on the left-hand side, you can see that it's possible to see an audit or an audit if not exists. Then we have deny actions, so we really can not allow you to do something. We have the option to append things. So for example, append a tag to a resource group or to a resource. We are able to deploy things like a log analytics agent, for example. And then we have the compliance rules that will be checked on change of a resource, on a periodic cadence, and if requested on demand, quite in preview, but will be better in the future. And then we get, on the one hand side, the enforcement. Really, you cannot create, or yes, there will be an audit if you do so, or you cannot change something because it is denied. This will be really enforced. On the other hand side, you will see a compliance. So what you can see, enforcement is just working on change and on creation. So policies that are in place after a resource has been created are not taking any action, only if you change the resource. And this is why we have the compliance, because if you put a policy in place afterwards, then you have compliance to see if everything's working fine or not. So what's going on? We have our configuration request, we have the Azure policy waiting for it. Then here it comes, and they will evaluate if there is something in there that's probably not allowed. You wanted to create, for example, a public IP, and I don't like this. Other way, you just go in there, and you have no deny action because it was quite fine. Then it's approved and will bring you to a cloud resource that is created right now. The actions that will go in there is there something I have to append to this deployment? Oh, yes, no. Okay, let's go to the next step. Am I actually allowed to do this action? Yes. Then let's go to the next step. No, then do a deny. Then we will do all the audit actions that are possible or required. And if the resource is created or the resource is in a change state, then we have a look if there's something to deploy and if there's something to audit because it's still not existing. And it's still the same. So you have a config request, it goes to the Azure Policy Engine, and the Azure Policy Engine just has a look. Do I need to append something? Do I have to deny something? Or do I have to audit something? And when the resource is created, we will have a look if there's something to deploy and something to audit. Don't be afraid, there are way more numbers on the next slide. I don't want to go through all of them today. It's really just about having an eye on this, because you can see there are, for example, 250 policy definitions per scope. And what you can see there is a scope, is a subscription or a management group. And really keep an eye on this, because to have 250 policies on a subscription, maybe that's not the problem. But if you want to go into a management group and you have a huge management group where we have several hundred subscriptions in there, and your requests for policies are growing and growing and growing, then maybe 250 may be a problem in the future. Microsoft is adjusting those numbers all over the time, so just have a look into the documentation. They may have changed already. Now let's have a look into policies. We just want to switch here to my other blade, and what you can see right now, if we go into the policy blade in the Azure portal, then we first start with such an overview. You can see, oh, there's an overall resource compliance. So 179 out of 180 resources are compliant. Sounds quite well. We have one of our initiatives, I will explain what it is in a second, which is not compliant, and we have 2 policies out of 78 that are not compliant, and we have 1 resource like we've seen here out of this 180. And then you can see already my policies in place and if they are compliant or not. And this is what we said, like, yes, we have a compliance dashboard, so I can see everything is fine, all my resources are in the allowed locations, all my virtual machines are running on allowed SKUs, and all my resource locations are matching my resource group is matching resource location. So that's quite well. But we can see, oh, we have an ASC, so the Azure Security Center, there's something non-compliant. Maybe we should have a look into this later. But first, let's go into the authoring of policies. And what you can see when you have a look into the definitions view here, there are several hundreds, thousands, or whatever, of predefined policies. You can see the type is all built in. So this is what Microsoft provides to us. There's a very, very huge set of policies in place right now. Very common policies are things like location policies. Just have a look in here. There are things like the allowed locations for the resource groups, or the policy you've seen on my side already, the audit location, to check if a resource group has the same location like the resource in it. We also see some things about tagging, so we enforce some tags, we append some tags, we require some specific tags, otherwise you are not able to deploy something. This is all about the cost management stuff. But we also have the cool features like deploy a log analytics agent to a Windows or to a Linux VM. These are the deploy if not exists policies. You can see, yes, it's still in preview, but trust me, it's working quite well. And all those policies, and maybe let's go back to the location stuff, all these policies are working in an if-then working mode. So if we have a look into the definition itself, it's a JSON file, you can see here. We have some properties, we have a parameter that is used, it's the list of allowed locations, so for example West Europe and North Europe for me, and then we have the policy itself. Like I said, it's an if and then option here, so if those things do apply, like my field location for the changed or created resource is not in the list of my parameters, so it's not West Europe or North Europe, then all the field location is not global, or the field type is not B2C directory, then we will have the effect deny. So actually I'm not able to create something then. And this policy is a predefined policy by Microsoft. Let's go one step back, and you can see that I have a policy created on my own. So it's a custom policy here, and I've created an audit location policy, also interesting for me, because I want to just check if something is there. I don't want to really block it. I just want to be informed. I want to have an audit entry if something is created anywhere else than I expected it. And so I've done nothing special. I just created a resource group, a resource definition, policy definition, with a parameter for the allowed location, like we've seen right now. But now the policy rule looks a bit different. We are just checking if the location is not in my parameters list, then the effect is not deny anymore. The effect is audit here, and so now we are able to have a log entry and to really filter for this, check for this, who has created something outside of our region. And yeah, so we just have an audit. People are not blocked from working. They can still proceed. These are just the definitions. The definition itself has no filled parameters. It's still just a definition. And if you really want to use it, you have to assign it. And for example, if we go ahead here with the audit location policy, you can see I can assign it to a scope. And because this is created especially for this subscription, my only scope I can choose here is the subscription itself. If we go to another, maybe one of the predefined resources here, then you can see that is created for the tenant root group, so it's on the top level. And now I can assign it to a management group. I also can assign it to a subscription, and I also could break it down to a specific resource group. But let's go back to the own created resource here. I want to assign this. It's especially for the scope. That's fine. My policy definition is audit location, and now I have to fill in the parameter. So it's West Europe for me and it's North Europe for me, and I assign it. So new policy assigned. It's nothing special, nothing very complicated. Just do it. And if you have a look into the assignments, you will find an overview of all your assigned policies. You can also filter them here for several scopes, management groups once again, or a single subscription, for example. And you can also filter for your policies and initiatives. What's the difference between a policy and an initiative? A policy is a policy. It's a one-on-one match, just one policy with one if-then rule. And initiative is the collection of several policies. Like you can see here, the Azure Security Center default policy is made out of 74 single policies combined to one big policy set. And yeah, you can assign this also to use it here. So now when my policy is created, you can have a look here. I have my compliance rules. And you can see, okay, my new policy is added right now. And we can see also that the compliance state is not started. It takes around about 30 minutes from assigning a policy till the first compliance state is collected. You could trigger it from the outside through a REST call, but you don't have to. You just wait 30 minutes and then you will see it in here. And now let's have a look. I have some assigned policies already. So for example, we have here the allowed locations. And if you have a look into my allowed locations, you can see West Europe and North Europe are the only allowed locations for my Berg demo subscription. So let's go ahead and let's just create, for example, a public IP. That's always a good choice just to check it. Just let's give it a name. We will choose a demo public IP 01, and I will select a resource group where we have to put this in. And if you have a click on create right now, then you can see the validating is in. And that's the moment where the policy engine kicks in and is really checking on what's going on here. And you could see it was created quite well. So now let's go one step further. Let's create another public IP address in here, create it. That's our demo. Oops, that's our demo public IP 02. And now we change it to a location that's not allowed any longer. So for example, let's go to East Asia in here. I click create again, the validating is kicking in again, and now we will see that there is hopefully, yes, there is, there's a validation error. This validation error really says like, oops, the resource is disallowed by a policy, and the policy we matched here is the allowed locations policy. So actually, I'm not able to create this resource, and this is really what I tried to achieve. So mission accomplished. That's a good thing. Now, let's bring all of this together while talking about blueprints. So now you can imagine you will have several organizations or teams or departments in your company asking for policies, for several policies, for exclusion of policies, for some things. Then you have people asking for specific role-based access, for example, and then you will see all the time when you create a new subscription, for example, the request for, but we need to be connected to, but we need this, but we need a lock space, but we need a storage account for something special. And sometimes people want to have this in an easy and controlled way to create something. And this is what blueprints are about. Blueprints just compose all those things. So they compose role-based access control sets, policy definitions, and ARM templates into one manageable asset, an Azure Blueprint. And this Azure Blueprint can be used to push it out to subscription A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so recreate overall the nearly same environment. Yes, you also could do this via a CI/CD pipeline with some good templates and scripts, whatever. Yep, that's possible, but sometimes customers want to have this in the Azure portal, and sometimes they want to have something special, and I will show you the special thing in a second. So let's have a look into the last demo of the show, and let's go to blueprints. If we want to start with blueprints, just see this here. It's still in preview, so just for you to know, it takes some time till it's GA, but it's working quite well right now. Like we've seen with the policies, there are definitions and there are assignments. So we have the pure definition of a blueprint, and so the composing action, and then we have the assigned blueprints. This is where we really work with it. And if you go in there and the blueprint definitions and you create your first blueprint, then you can see, there's the option to create a blank blueprint, but also there is an option, for example, right now for an ISO 27001 policy and creation template for an ASE and for an SQL workload, and also an ISO for shared services. The strange thing is we have a slight language issue here. You can see all my portal is English, everything is in English, also the blank blueprint is in English, but for any specific reason, the samples that are provided by Microsoft are written in German language because my regional format is set to German. I don't know, maybe that will be fixed in the future. If you want to create a blank blueprint, you can go ahead, or if you want to reuse something Microsoft has prepared for you, and you can imagine that we will see some more in here in the next weeks and months, then you can go ahead and give this blueprint a name. I will give it a name like Demo Blueprint 01, and then you have to define a location. And once again, we are back at a management group level or a subscription level where you have to store this blueprint. Just the policy, just the definition of it. It's not yet assigned, but I can store it anywhere there. So let's go to the artifacts. And if you have a look in here into the blueprints artifacts, then you can see there are some policy assignments in there. There are some resource manager templates deployed. And there are also some resource groups created, and there's a log analytics workspace created. There's an Azure firewall in there. You can see there's a jump box created. There's an Azure domain service created. And this is all prepared by Microsoft. And in the end, if you have a look, there's really just a resource manager template. So that's just a JSON file you may have known before. But this is created especially to fit the ISO standards everybody wants to fit, and also you can see all the policy assignments like allowed locations and things like this. And those blueprints now can be used. I've pre-created one here, and I can assign this blueprint. And what you can see here, if we assign this blueprint, we are able to give it an assignment name, choose the location, choose the version we want to use, and then we can fill out all the information that is required. And you can see that most of the steps need some kind of definition, like which allowed storage SKUs do you want to use, or which are allowed resource types, or which allowed whatever locations do you want to use. And then there's one specific thing I want to show you. and that's the lock assignment. So everything that's assigned here can be locked with a do not delete or read-only lock, so that if you create a resource in here, like a log analytics workspace, that's not possible to be deleted. Even if you're the owner of a subscription, you cannot delete it, and that's very valuable. So overall, that's a very, very good thing that will help us to achieve exactly what we want, so that people are able to work better together between operations and development. Thank you, enjoy the rest of the show, and see you soon.